Hello, my friends. It's time for Thought Shifting Thursdays, and I had something prepared that I was going to talk about today, and I'll talk about it next week. It's called Panic Attack Hack. But we're not going to talk about that today. What we're going to talk about today is the sadness I'm feeling about just all the violence in the world, the racism, the social injustice, the financial inequities. I have a good friend who's of Japanese descent, and so the violence that we've been seeing in the news lately against Asians, when it hits home with someone that you care about, then it hits home. And so, I don't usually talk about the problems in the world because, my work, what is mine to do is to help people on an individual basis, and in classes and in lectures and so on how to shift themselves internally because, if enough of us, if a critical mass shift internally, then the whole world shifts, right? Then the greed that we see that is so rampant in the world then becomes the anomaly rather than the norm. So I'm going to share an exercise at the end of this video for how to take responsibility on doing what we can do, what is mine to do. But to begin with, I just want to, again, share my sadness and just explore this. Why is our world this way, right? There's so many answers to that question. Why is there so much violence? Why is there still such racism? It comes down to, for me, just kindness. Every religious teaching, even though religions have not always followed their own advice, professes simply loving kindness. I interviewed a Buddhist monk once, and I asked him, so, how do you remain at peace? And he just said, loving kindness. It's not about simply how can I be peaceful inside. It's about how can I create peace for other people, for those around me, with loving kindness. I look at, I don't know if this is a political agenda. I don't like to get political either, but, there's, the solution seems to me in the progressive liberal agenda to an extent. And that is that, when people are happy and fulfilled, in most cases, there are exceptions to this rule, but in most cases, when people are happy and joyful and fulfilled, they don't do violent things. They don't do stupid things. They express loving kindness. And a big problem in our world, in our country, is the inequities that we see. And so, the conservative agenda is to make a broad generalization here, is about protecting the individual. The liberal agenda is about protecting and advancing the benefits for all, right? And both of these are important perspectives. If you had only one, if it was all about individualism and protecting the individual, then, we would have pure anarchy. If it was all about, protecting and advancing the benefits for all, then we would have anarchy, most likely. In fact, I once interviewed for Meditation Magazine some psychologists from Russia, or the Soviet Union at the time. This was several decades ago. And at the same time, I interviewed several people that happened right after the coup in the Soviet Union, back in, I think it was around 1991. And it was interesting to see the perspectives. And what came out of that is that, the U.S., compared to the Soviet Union, is all about, the rights of the individual. And the Soviet Union, based on communism, was all about, good for the whole. At least in ideology, it wasn't expressed that way. It didn't pan out that way, right? And so, the philosophy then is if you have one side or the other, it doesn't benefit anyone. What we need to move toward is a balance, right? And so, and probably to lean more toward the liberal agenda at this point because of the inequities that we see, so that we can balance, until there is a balance of financial resources, then things are just going to get worse and worse because more and more people are going to be happy, and when more and more people are unhappy, shit happens, right? So, it comes down to this too. The simple thing, I think I talked about this before, about wearing a mask or not wearing a mask, is symbolic of what we're talking about here. Is that the people who don't want to wear masks are outraged that I'm being told to do something. I'm an individual. I can do whatever the hell I want. The people who want to wear a mask, the vast majority, it's not just about protecting myself, because masks don't protect me very much. They protect the other person, right? And so the person who is the staunch mask advocator is advocating for the whole, the good of all. And we need to move more in this direction in order for our society to flourish. In fact, if we go in the other direction any further, it's going to collapse. And so, I'm not going to talk about the political agenda for that, because that's not what's mine to do. But I do want to just, again, share my sadness about what I see in the world, and also my hope for the future that I know can happen is if we continue to develop ourselves internally and our own level of peace. And so this is going to bring me to the exercise I want to do in a few moments. Because what is mine to do for sure is to, if I see injustice in the world, is how am I being unjust in my own life? Because I can point it out in the world pretty easily, right? But what are the injustices on a personal level between me and my clients or my friends or my family? I can point out racism in the world, but right, how is racism showing up? And bigotry in my own expression in the world? And even though it may be at a subtle level for someone who's been self-examining for, my whole adult life, there's still areas to improve, right? And I need to learn from people of color about where I have blind spots, right? How am I being unfair, in finance, in my own life, in my own dealings, right? So that's what this exercise is about. So, call for love. My good friend Naomi, who I was just talking about. And so I'm going to go there. Thank you, Naomi. And so, as I say in my book, The Magic of the Soul, everything that occurs everywhere has one purpose behind it, and that is the raising of the frequency of love, right? So even in the most horrific, violent acts that we can see, we may not be able to see how is that raising the vibration of love, but I believe that everyone's playing a role, their particular role, in love unfolding more love, raising the frequency of love on our planet. And so even the perpetrator of a violent crime is playing a role, right? They may not be aware of it, but if nothing else, it's a call for love, right? It is a call for love for the victim. It's a call for love for the perpetrator. There's a guy, and I don't know if I always come up with quotes and I can't remember all the details because I don't have it in front of me. I could Google it, but I don't want to take the time to do that. I think his name is Azim. I'll just say Azim for now. And it's a story about his son who was killed by a gang member, I think it was a 13 or 14-year-old gang member who was doing an initiation to become part of a gang. His son was delivering a pizza, and um, and a gun was handed by an older gang member to this younger gang member who pulled the trigger and killed his son. And he went into meditation. He's a Muslim, by the way. He went into meditation, and he instantly got that there was a victim on both sides of this crime. There was a victim on both sides of this crime. And so he created a foundation to end violence. And thank you so much for reminding me this, inspiring me to go here with this, Naomi. And so he created this foundation, and he found the grandfather who raised the son, the grandson who killed his son. And they became friends, and they both mourned this loss, the death of Kazim's son, and so they went around lecturing at schools and about nonviolence. And later on, Hazim connected with the boy who was tried as an adult, I believe, and was serving his term, and had reformed himself and educated himself, and so he connected with this young man, and they became friends. Can you imagine becoming the friends of the person who killed your son or daughter or anyone that you loved? And he guaranteed him that when he got out of prison, he would have a position in his foundation to help educated people to end violence. So that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. So if nothing else, every act of violence is a call for love. And if it's a call for love, then I am called to provide love to everyone involved, to the victim, to the perpetrator, to the family of the victims. And so that's what I'm here to do. So this exercise is about owning what we can do in our own personal lives to create the shifts that we want to see on a global basis. So I'm going to run through this with you. So in one column, just simply write down on a piece of paper all the things that you most want to see change in the world. So let's say it's end hunger, end violence, end racism, end financial inequity, and racism, bigotry on all levels, right? And so now what I'm going to do in the next column is say what I was alluding to earlier, is how is hunger taking place in my own life? How am I not feeding myself? How am I not feeding or nurturing those around me? And answer that question. Let's see. How will I answer that? Since I'm going to give you time to do it, I may as well answer it myself. So there's certainly times when it's pretty rare. I said this on the most of the time. I see people all the time when I play tennis, like badmouth themselves when they miss a shot. And I'm always try to be encouraging to myself, but oh boy, I missed such an easy volley. And I said, you idiot. And that's a rare thing in my life. I have a lot of healthy and positive internal dialogue. But that's a way that I am starving myself by any time that I'm not being kind to myself. Because as you all know, this isn't news to anyone, I'm only going to be as kind to others as I am to myself. So that really relates. I could use the same example for ending violence. That was a violent act to myself, right? How am I violent to others that I'm close to? You know, how do I react sometimes to my wife in an angry way if she's angry at me, right? And I get a pretty high score on that, and yet there's always room for improvement. Ending racism, I've got an exercise that maybe I'm going to do this with you in a moment. I'm going to come back to racism then. Financial inequity. How much do I, we donate a lot, but I know we can donate more, and we're looking at that. We're creating a plan right now for how we can donate more of our income to those less fortunate. How am I, how am I maybe depriving myself financially in some things, thinking that I'm saving for a future, right? Okay, I want to get to this exercise that I've never shared anywhere other than with a couple clients. And that is, close your eyes and imagine that you are walking down a dark alley. This will be different depending on what color your skin is, right? You're walking down a dark alley, and there are 5 Caucasian, white-skinned people, lads, men, young men, walking your way. And they're laughing and talking, and, they've got, maybe some tattoos and baggy pants, and, people that, not in a suit and tie, right? So just notice what your emotional reaction is to that. How safe do you feel? Are you creating strategies in your head about how to handle this meeting as you're coming closer? Or maybe you're thinking of running the other way. Now let's change the scene up a little bit. You've got 5 lads, same clothes, same tattoos, dark skin, very dark skin lads walking down the alley toward you. How do you feel? Is it the same level of concern or fear or figuring out a plan for how to deal with this? Or is there a difference? And now we'll do the scenario. Let's just to give it a little twist here. You're walking in the woods, no one else around, but there's 4 lads coming to you. Once again, white skin, or let's say white skin. And again, they've got tattoos, they're laughing it up, and there's no one else around. What is your emotional reaction to that? And switching it up again. What are, now it's for brown skin. Or since we were talking about Asians. Any color that you want of skin. What is your reaction to that? So I'll tell you my reaction when I developed this for myself, and it came around. A friend of mine, Reverend Steve Rambo, was doing a talk and an interactive talk on racism and white privilege, and I really wanted to look at what is my level of racism. And I had to admit, when creating this exercise for myself, that there was more fear if those lads were dark-skinned. And I did this with a client of mine, and I thought, and he's from India, brown skin, and I thought that he would also be more afraid if it was like really dark skin, perhaps African American people walking down that alley. But he was much more afraid when it was white skinned people. So that's just to look at our biases, right? So what did you notice in this for yourself? And then take that to heart. How can we up-level? How can we bring more love into that expression? Into every expression in our lives. So let's take this into meditation. So close your eyes again. Take a nice deep healing breath. Let's just imagine for a moment that we have healed all of the injustices within ourselves. That we love ourselves unconditionally at 100%. That's an ideal. We may never arrive at that. But in order to up-level where we are, just imagine what that's like. When I love myself unconditionally, how do I treat others? How do I react or respond to injustices in the world? What am I inspired to do with my life as far as acts of loving kindness toward others? How I allocate my resources to help myself, to help friends and family, to help those less fortunate. Give you a moment. A phrase that came to me years and years ago is living from the energy of the completed vision. I've shared this a few times in my videos, so we just created a vision. Loving myself unconditionally. Now bring the energy of that back into this moment. Take a deep breath. And love yourself unconditionally in this very moment. Live from the energy of that ideal vision. Fake it till you make it. Play with it. So my closing word will be this. And these are words that came to me when I was talking about self-love to a client a while ago now. And the words are, the phrasing is, when I love myself unconditionally, what I come to realize is that I am not myself. I am in fact the self. I am in fact pure love. And so are you, my friend. That's what we are here to do together, is to raise our own frequency of love, self-love, and to express more love in the world. It doesn't get any simpler than that or any more truthful than that, at least from my perspective. Okay, love you guys, and next week we're going to talk about panic attack hack, or ending any kind of neuroses like motion sickness, claustrophobia, panic attacks, anxiety. So it's a very powerful process. So I hope you tune in then, and have a really great rest of your week, and be in love. All right. Thank you. Love you all.